anybody here for public comment, so we will move along. That takes us to approval of minutes from March. Hope you all had a chance to review that in your packet. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion is second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to the approval of vouchers. Likewise, entertain a motion or any questions.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. That takes us to the monthly reports for February.
Yes, sir. We are in very good shape financially, and we're thrilled to be where we are. Dusty, I know I'm not going to take the wind right out of your sail, so you could share with the board.
Sure. I'm going to be brief because I think we've got a lot to get to tonight. But overall, it was a very successful month. The electric department achieved a net margin of $505,511 for the month of February, and it puts them at $2,614,000 year to date. The electric department continues to exceed the forecast for the year by $1,341,000. The water and sewer department also had a successful month in February, achieving a net margin of $60,127 and increases the year-to-date total to $527,792. Does anybody have any questions about the financials? I've got one more comment to make too about something else that was in the board packets. So every year when we submit when our auditors submit our financial statements to the state, the comptroller's office will review those, and they'll typically send a letter of acknowledgement or any recommendations for future guidance on financial statements. So there was nothing mentioned on the pension audit. They just simply said acknowledge that it was received and filed. As far as the electric, water, and sewer statements, they noted that we need to update our notes to the financial statements to comply with GASB statement number 89 concerning capitalized interest cost. GASB stipulates that interest costs should be recorded as expenses rather than capitalized. Given that we have not borrowed for any new projects in the electric department, and we currently maintain no debt within the water and sewer department, this situation does not presently affect our financial statements. However, we do need to get it updated, and Jim Boer, our auditor from Brown Jacob McDaniel, has verified that this adjustment will be implemented upon the completion of our financial statements for the current fiscal year. And that's all I have to say about that, unless you all have any questions.
Yeah, I was curious. Thank you for addressing that. I was curious about it. It seemed more administrative, and
Yes.
it sounds like it is.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Comments? All right. Entertaining a motion to approve the monthly reports for February.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
If you got a motion in a second. All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Project status reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are currently tracking in electric 3 projects, and we are tracking 2 in water. And I'm going to ask Todd to brief us on the electric, and then I'll ask Greg to brief us on the water.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As Greg said, we have got 3 projects here currently tracking on the electric side of things. The first one there, the Granite Road, which has been on the list here since December, is now complete. Went well as expected. And then the second 2, the Harold Lane and the Buffalo Road, we're now under construction on both of those projects, kind of in the early stages there with both of those. Just kind of doing some right-of-way construction and some initial union sets of poles, I think, at Buffalo Road. But have both things indicate they go very well and should have no problem with either of those being finished here by the end of June as anticipated. Any questions on any of that?
The Harold Lane's actually named after my grandfather.
Yes, sir.
If I hear any family members ask me anything, how do I sum up what's going on?
We are rebuilding that line and moving it to the road. It's located well off the road there to get it to the road for greater accessibility, and also three-phasing up through there so we can break that load up. That was a single-phase line that's been there since probably the 50s, 60s, I guess. So now it's kind of one of our more heavily loaded single-phase lines. We three-phase it, put aerial cable up through there for greater reliability, and also give us to be able to balance that system load out, helps on our losses. So should be a lot more reliable. That's been one of the on our reliability kind of watch list. So hope we can help them better service over there.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no questions on the electric, we'll go to the water.
Greg, everybody will be interested in what's going on Market Street. So.
If you've been down there lately, you've seen that they've started digging up Market Street. Sometimes they temporarily close the lanes for bypass pumping, but that's only temporary. It's all coordinated. So they are still in the area of the Freddie Fagan Way. A cured-in-place contractor does the rehab on the sewer lines, has moved in on site, and they're down there around Broad Street and Main Street area right now. So you'll see them come in and out, but they're still the sewer is moving along, and no issues at this point.
They're in front of the Hoskins. And got a hole there, and I was down there, and apparently Molly and Jinky and Catherine, were there, and they are now going to get hard hats so they can oversee everything that goes through on all of that. And they had a lot to say. They were very good, but they were also very complimentary about the workers, and you can share that too, Greg, to get a buy-in from the owners down there about how polite and respectful and how much they try to accommodate, when they're blocking their doors and everything else. It's a lot to be said that they were very positive about that.
I most definitely will.
This is phase one of the TAP grant, correct?
Yes.
Okay, does it end that, how far does it go past Hoskins?
It goes all the way up to right there at Main Street, right there where Apple Blossom's at.
Okay.
As far as and then down Market Street, in that area right in there.
The Hoskins we're talking about is Hoskins in the flat.
That's correct.
Not the drugstore.
And then
okay.
phase two will go from there to where?
The phase two portion of it is basically all TDOT, and that's with the city, so I don't know where they're going to pick it back up, because I know that they're working on it now.
We only care about water and sewer, don't we, buddy?
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Yes. But that's where the water and sewer's at.
And the good news is we'll be out of there first, because we're going to destroy everything and then put all this new in there. And then what comes back, and that's where the savings to Cub is. And that's why, Roger, when we talked about this years ago, it was an opportunity that we couldn't resist, because there's going to be destruction and construction. And where we don't have to come back and pave, put sidewalks in and things like that, that's going to really help us. All we've got to do essentially is cover it back up.
Miller Road, if you drove out towards I-75, you seen where they've dug on the right-hand side of the road right there. They hit some rocks, slowed them down, but they're still on schedule, for completion on that. So it's moving well. That's all I have.
So you said the Market Street lane closures and stuff is just kind of intermittent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've driven by a few times, mostly during school drop-off pickup. It looks like it's been closed. I just assumed it was closed for.
No, they actually opened it back up yesterday evening.
Okay, cool.
Whenever they got the bypass back up.
That's great. I'm sure the business owners appreciated that too.
There will be a period, though, it's closed for some extent.
Yes. Yes.
Any other questions, comments on the board? All right. Thanks for the reports. Move us over to PO.
We have one wire purchase order to Border States for $148,320. You can see in your quotation how that played out. Anything you want to say on that, Todd?
No, sir. This is
It's
for our
pretty standard.
inventory for upcoming projects, probably in the next year.
3 bidders, and we recommend the lowest and best bid of $148,320.
All right. Entertain a motion, or anybody has any questions?
Move to approve.
Second. All right, got a motion and a second from Mr. Combs. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Work order 1077S.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This work order represents a station down on Fouts Carney, the sewer pump, and one where Greg will be thrilled when that is complete. That's been limping along for quite some time, and we just have no choice but to upgrade that system. Greg, you want to speak to any of that?
No, it's located right there at Faust Carney, right there next to the church. And about a year and a half ago, it actually got hit by a vehicle, and we've had to piecemeal it together back then. So it is a critical asset.
He's got epoxy coating down there, you might see on that, but that's really glue that he's put together for a year and a half. But part of that, as you know, some of you may remember, we have been in long-term negotiations with the county on the sewer in Claxton. Back, if you'll remember, which I certainly do, when we took over First Utility District, historically, our water and sewer was within the city limits. And back in the 60s, the city said, we really don't want to be in the water and sewer business, and we would like the utility Clinton Power Commission to take that over. So that's when we became Clinton Utilities Board, and all of our water and sewer was in the city limits. But in the 80s, because the city wanted to annex South Clinton, South Clinton was served by First Utility District, we couldn't just take those and section off water and sewer within the South Clinton boundary. That would have gutted First Utility District because they also serve parts of Fouts Carney and on down into Claxton. So CUB took over all of First Utility District, and that's what got us out of the city limits. Now, we had a moratorium on sewer. We had a package station down there in Pine Meadows that when it rained, it would literally lift up and float. Not a good place to be, and I think maybe 230 customers. We worked hard to eventually get rid of that and work into the county's piping that will bring it back all the way to South Clinton for us to treat. So it's been a symbiotic relationship between ACWA and CUB on how all of that's handled. We believe it would be in the best interest of both the county and the city for that sewer to be county controlled, because that has it's the chokehold on growth. Because if you can't provide sewer, public sewer, it's hard to get the residential housing and the commercial that you need to grow. So we have been talking to them for quite some time, but we have improved that system unbelievably. What there was at one time just garden hoses essentially in there for water lines, and we put a lot of money in. We put a reservoir out there, and all of that to say is that in that negotiation for me to recommend to this board that we make a transfer to the county, that it has to make financial sense and also be recognize for the revenue stream that we'll lose, and B, the assets that we have in play. So we were close about 2 years ago, and that put on hold, but not off the stove. And every time we make an addition like this, which is a considerable amount, we're talking $300,000 for representing the water and sewer department. That adds to the price tag of when that eventual, and I believe it will turn. I think a lot of that's going to happen as we try to make improvements and take over Bull Run and make that into an industrial park, because that's going to take a whole new deal, working up through there. And all of that is in the master plan of how we do it in the county. So the capital improvements that we make that are going to affect Claxton is going to be reflected in how we get a return on that investment should we get to the point where the county will take that over. I'd like to just serve water and sewer within the city limits, and I'd like for the county, because they charge half again what we charge, what their rates are half again what we charge. So if you're living out in the county and you've got that kind of water, and you've got CUB with a rate here, and you've got the county with a different rate there, it becomes very frustrating, especially if one has CUB sewer and the other, and in the same household, has ACWA water. That's got to be confusing for anybody. So we're working hard to get that squared away, but we're tracking every cent that goes into those assets down there.
Just on, since you mentioned it, since there was a wreck, is there an auto claim against, or that we recover against it? So it's in subrogation, I guess.
There was.
Okay. Did we get paid already for it? Settled on it? Do you know?
I'd have to check them.
Yeah, have to double
Okay.
check.
Didn't know if it covered some protection there on it.
Yeah.
So it'll be an offset, which is good, I guess, or something maybe. If they were insured.
That's it.
Yeah. Subrogation will take forever anyway.
All right, any other questions on the work order? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Takes us to DVR, TVA agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put together, we received a contract that we signed back in November, and it's about 14 to 15 pages. And then we've got an amendment to that contract, and I thought, what a great opportunity to bring the board up to what sometimes you don't see going on in the background. And I thought we have some new members, and this is short, but it's visual, and you should be able, hopefully be able to follow it. This is all about dispatchable voltage regulation and a contract we've contracted with TVA. So to understand this, we'll take a minute just to look back on how we got to the point that we were into this agreement with TVA. And I'm jumping back to October of 2009, and that's when DOE put $3.4 billion out there because they recognized that the electric infrastructure in Texas had a lot to do with that, because they had a lot of brownouts going on, and there was concern about the stability of the electric grid throughout the United States. So DOE made available to 100 recipients, which they had to apply for, $3.4 billion to do advancements in their smart grid technology. So a lot of people applied: TVA, Southern Company, Pepco, Florida Power and Light, Con Edison, Duke, and a lot of the others that you can think of. And so there are billions and millions of dollars going out to these major hitters, and they use that within their own electric system to make improvements with technology. But there was one power distributor within the valley of the 153 in the 7 states, and that was Chattanooga Power and Light, and they got $111,570,000 grant, and I put by the highway of the Corker and Alexander because Corker was the former mayor. So one small LP local power company, because this is nationwide, they were one of 100 to get that, and that was pretty significant. The Chattanooga Times says that they will become the electric system of the future, and what will make them the electric system of the future is the technology that they're going to bring to bear, which is this automatic and advanced metering infrastructure, the ability to do dynamic voltage regulation, and also the ability, I guess, to communicate within their system and bring these upgrades. So, with that 111 million, they put another 200 million to that. So they're now plus 300 million to be the electric system of the future, which is really a smile because they're not even to where we are right now. With TVA's money, they put together what they call a smart grid enterprise after they improved their own system. And they offered that out to the 153 power distributors in the valley for a voltage regulation pilot. They asked for RFPs if you're able to respond to a indication from TVA to lower your voltage. We would be interested in for you to pilot in this program because it's that important. They see that as an advancement, and who can do that? So out of the 153, 16 qualified to be in this pilot program. Cub was the first one to qualify. And through that, we were also the first one in the valley, including Chattanooga. We beat Chattanooga out with their 300 million to demonstrate an operational dynamic voltage regulation solution. In other words, when TVA needed it, we were able to respond to it. And they gave us $3.3 million, an award. They gave us a check. And they also, this nice letter, the way they put it is, I applaud your commitment to bring the smart grid to the Tennessee Valley, and Cub has emerged as a leader in the smart grid technology. This is back in 2010. So, with that understanding and our ability, we then became the first and still the only one in the valley that has designed a virtual power plant that incorporates dynamic voltage regulation, demand partnership program, and direct load control. And some of you who've been on the board a while will recognize that acronym for those 3 legs of the virtual power plant. We recently had TVA come in because it represented 10 years of participation and this operational excellence with the Valley and in cooperation with TVA and able to respond to them for grid stability. This worked really well in the rolling blackouts of December of 2022. This is actually CUB, as you can see, when they called out for a voltage reduction, you can see where we dropped. They did it in 2 pieces, and we responded, I think, 17.1 megawatts on that one day, and then on the next day, it totaled out to 28 or 29 megawatts that we were able to deliver to them within seconds of the time that they called for it. The truth of the matter is, and we have talked about this with TVA and they agree, as little as a third of the LPCs in the valley, as little as if they were able to do what we were doing, we'd have never seen rolling blackouts at that time because we were able to respond, and most of them had to get into trucks and go to the substation where we've got our system operator up there hitting a button, and we're dropping 5% on voltage. He hits another button, we drop another 5%. And then when they went into firm power, which means you've got to drop out breakers, we dropped out 108
107.
107, I'll never get that right. 107 breakers and 15-minute intervals. And to give you a comparison, Memphis, the biggest utility in the valley, they were able to drop out 40. We dropped out 107. We brought back 107. Memphis couldn't bring back but 22 of their 40 that they dropped out. So it was a big deal, and they recognized that. And following that, I mean, we had a lot of discussions, and part of those discussions were with Don Mall, who is now the new CEO of TVA, a good friend now. And we've had groups out from Washington here, the policy groups. We've had EPRI out here. We've had every department that TVA had. About over this last year and a half, maybe as many as 80 different people coming out here in order how to replicate what we had. And part of them, what TVA went through, and they started in November of 2023. These are the mile markers that they went through in order to come up with this first agreement on this DVR, which they rolled out in November of 2024, which we signed. All the peer review, it went through TVPPA, it went through contracts committee in order to make this thing work. And in 2024 November, we signed the contract, and in December, the next month of 2024, was the first active month of this DVR program. So part of what the requirements are was your ability to demonstrate voltage reduction within the required window and have the link up necessary to do that. We did that. So we are one of 3 now in the whole valley that are currently on this because we're the ones that can do it and these others can't. So in November 24, we were the first to qualify and the first to enter into the agreement in order to optimize the distribution level voltage. So TVA then has access to our virtual power plant, and it becomes a dispatchable energy for them that when they press and they see their peak going up, they can hit that, and our system will respond to that and lower the voltage, which lowers the energy, which lowers their peak. So that's all good. And then
Do we lose control though?
we have given them control. We never lose control. We've given them control to dispatch that at will. But we always control because we're not going to let our system degrade because we have the technology to know what the last customer on the radial in Briceville, what the voltage is, and he's always within plus or minus the 5% of that ANSI standard, which is considered utility voltage, and your equipment is fine with that. It goes lower than that, it's a different story. So it'll never go lower than with plus or minus 5% of the 120.
So
that
they're
you
not
get
robbing from an efficient system to help a system that's not efficient.
Well, that you can say that. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. We always
How do we get?
we-
How does it benefit us?
we run, and I'll tell you, but we run at the higher end of the voltage. Most all do. That way, if a squirrel decides to get zapped, you're not going to see a dip. You see, so you run at that higher voltage, and you'll always be within that range. But for economic purposes, which is different for them because they'll use this to lower their peak for economics, but they'll lower it for system integrity, for grid stability, all of that they'll do. It becomes dispatchable, and they're going to pay us for that. So we just got our first invoice that says, "Great job. Here's $1,231," which we thought, well, that's really nice. Todd says that can't be right, and then goes through the formula to determine how that works, because he thinks it should be much more than that, and he says it's not enough. So the contract says, on this 14-page contract, it includes algorithms to determine the demand credits, the equation for calculating demand credits, the equation for calculating energy credits, and a calculation to measure event performance. All pretty impressive. We're going to concentrate on the algorithm to determine demand credits, and that's what Todd did. That's the original formula for him to get, and that is incorrect. With all of these peer reviews, they come out with a formula, mathematical formula, that it's incorrect. So Todd has helped them determine how to make that accurate and correct, and that's where this amendment came out, which we just got, which I just signed. And what that's meant for Cub is we went from the $1,231 to now we're at $33,949.38. That's an additional $32,000, and that's for 1 month. That's for 1 month. So all that to say, the 18 here is with all of that review, our guys here are in-house talent, and I've got an asterisk there, and the asterisk down at the bottom says Todd. You know, our in-house talent was able to cipher through all of that, those mathematical equations, and determine that they didn't work to our benefit. And then TVA was responsive to that, and that brought out the different amendments. But that's normally we don't share all of that with the board, but it's so indicative of the talent that we have here that makes a difference every day on savings to this company. $32,000 stroke in 1 month, and I really give Todd all the credit for that. Our ability to regulate through dynamic voltage regulation has produced $219,000 since through March of 2025. $10,219,000 since March of 2025 when we started this. And our virtual power plant, when you combine all of that together, it's $13,426,000. And I see you writing, and I'm so impressed with that, Rob, because for the first time,
Let's play hangman.
for the first time, you were not. Because of the first time, I saw in the newspaper where you were kind enough to mention our winning that award for taste, and
Did the reporter call you?
he did not call. He just wrote down what you said. But I appreciate that so much. If you like, and if it would be a benefit to you, we will provide you with bullet points that'll be succinct and have all this information down, and we'll send it to you so you'll have it and you can use any part of it that you want.
Probably one pager.
Yeah, one page with
Just
bullet
at the
points.
top level.
That's right. That's right.
Because I was taking notes because I've read all the stuff. The virtual power plant consists of the 3 acronyms, correct?
That's correct.
One is where you got that range and you lower it during peak, and
Right.
so the highest hour you get discounts.
Exactly.
Then you got the smart switch, which is your
All
pools and
all
coconut
designed to affect the demand. Everything is tied to when you hit your peak, and what we activated that virtual power plant on our peak. What's new is the fact that now we're partnering with TVA, which is the way it should be.
And what's the acronym for that one?
Virtual power plant, VPP.
VPP is the new thing.
That's right. Well, it's not new, but what is new about it is that we're partnering with TVA so they can access that to lower their peak. For public power, the public power model, the way it should be done and what we have been harping since day one is all the LPCs need to aggregate to affect TVA's peak. That's the way it should be, because you lower TVA's peak, it's lower for everybody across the valley. The cost of power, wholesale power, should be less because TVA pays less. But what they're doing, those that can, and there's not that many, they're all working their own peak, you see. We like the fact, and we've encouraged the fact, what's best for the valley ratepayer, as opposed to let's only take care of our own group. And what we did in this agreement is we said we will allow that as long as at the end of the day, our customers are not going to be subsidizing to the benefit of TVA's peak. So at the minimum, we get back what it would have been, because we're saving $11.39 or whatever it is per KW, we want to make sure that that gets back to us. So that's worked out really well.
So that demand partnership program is the new acronym,
The
right?
demand partnership program is no one has that, and that is the relationship that we have with companies, because we've got utility districts, because we love pumps, because you don't have to pump a reservoir up 24/7. So when we're in a peak place, we'll call on these.
Yeah.
They'll lower the price. Don't we even have Oak Ridge Hardwoods on this partner? And what we do is we give money back to them, and it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've given back to our customers that say, yes, when you are pulling the levers to lower your peak, we can take a hit. You say you can take whatever that hit is, and you just give us money at the end of the month every time you pull us, and we are now in concert with lowering your demand.
So I think what confused me, that formula is called the demand credit. That's the new piece with TVA. That's the new agreement. with
That's
TVA,
correct.
Right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's within the agreement, and that's what they've got to credit us back.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think it's funny too that they were using this seasonal expected demand reduction,
That was the key.
multiplying that.
That was the key because they didn't look at what our peak was. They're assuming it's coincident, and it's not.
It was
They
projected
missed our
versus,
peak.
versus actual. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was that scenario where they didn't reimburse us. We weren't made, we weren't going to lose, and now they've made us whole more so.
Yeah.
So, it was so the overriding thing, the virtual power plan encompasses all three of those components: the voltage regulation, the demand partnership, and direct load control, which is water heaters and smoke pumps. What we gave TVA has access to that the DVR component of that virtual power plant with this program. So that answers your.
So they kind of treat us like we're treating our ratepayers.
Those that are in the demand
Those that are on the
partnership.
demand partnership.
Yeah.
Yes. So
They're just shaving that off, and they're giving us basically a rebate. on it.
Sometimes they pay 20 some times per KW because they're buying it on the spot market than what they charge us wholesale. Because at those peak times, they're trying to get it from Southern or anywhere that they can because they need it for their grid stability. So they're paying, could be as many as 20 times what they, by contract, they can only charge us, say. So they're now trying to, that gap between what they charge us and what they got to pay for it in those peak times, they want to lower that gap. They want to lower that gap. And we want them to lower the gap too because we're the ones that are funding TVA. So they've got to charge a higher rate to offset the fact that they don't have the capacity or the generation in order to meet that. And what we have and me personally has pushed for a new generation. We need new base load within the footprint of the valley and not rely on outside of the valley to get this. And that's even some of that's another business. But this is indicative of our ability to be flexible and provide what I think is a great service. And again, we're used as the template for other LPCs, and we offer this, in order to help them. But the financial commitment that they have to make is substantial. So that's what scares them the most. And what we tell TVA is you got to have a stick and a carrot. You've got to say, let me give you low cost money, and I think TVA ought to make that money available. And then the return can be paid through the savings through this program that TVA will actually realize, and they say, you've saved us X amount, so that much will be put to your account, you see. And then sooner or later, when that loan is paid off, then that money goes back to the system. But that's a jump that some people have a hard time making.
Not being political, but them not having a quorum, does that affect us at all?
It
CUB?
will over time. uh, we we are very active in what's going on at TVA and very vocal. Uh, and we have a great relationship. I've got a really good relationship with the new CEO. I had a great relationship with the last one. I shared with Todd the his first day on the job, which was what, Tuesday. He calls me at 7:30 in the morning. The CEO does, and of course it's a number that I don't recognize because it's a cell phone. You see, out of Chattanooga, and I'm thinking I don't need any more, car insurance. So I don't pick it up. So he leaves a voicemail. So I mean, I've got that voicemail. Really great voicemail because again, the relationship that we have. Looking forward to working, relying on our communication. Wants to get together. And here's my cell phone. You call me anytime. He says I'm most available between 8 and 9 o'clock. But this is the phone that whatever you call me, you call me on this phone. So that's really good. And I told you 2 months ago I had breakfast with what was then the chair-elect, who is now the chair of TVA, because they fired, John Rich, who we really liked. Sorry that he's gone, but we do have a great relationship with Mr. Reddick, who is out of Mississippi, and he told Todd and I that he wants to move on our system because their power liability is terrible down there. And you can send this right to that utility. It's the worst one in the whole valley. I mean, it's terrible. They got to bush hog the substations. I mean, it's just terrible. So, does it affect us? It won't affect us until, if it lasts a long time, it'll affect the whole valley because we're trying, and I've written a letter now. I'm going to give you a copy of that to Secretary Wright because they're now they're pulling back on these SMRs, and that's part of what we want. So I've got a letter. I'm going to give you a copy. I had it in my other business that I wrote in support of TVA's project to start bringing these online, and it should support Trump's administration, with more electricity. He understands that, but I mean the coal industry is going to be affected. I mean Kingston is still coal, and I'm thinking that they're going to take another hard look at that before they shut the coal out of Kingston. They had tried to move the gas, but I think there's a real chance that they're going to try to keep that coal thing going. All of that is going to ripple through. I'm not opposed to the fact that coal will play a bigger role in TVA's portfolio because I like the mix. I like the hydro, I like the nuclear, I like the gas, I like the coal. It all makes sense. Solar makes 0 cents, and wind makes 0 cents. But everything else makes good sense. It's a good diverse distribution. But all of that to say is we're knocking it out of the park on this voltage regulation, and it's made a difference. It's made a big difference to our bottom line because we use these funds to we put them back into the system. So when you look at the capital outlay, we'll get to that. All of these upgrades and conductor and things like that, where when I say the investment in the technology enabled to advance up to the level we are is many, 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 many millions of dollars for any system. Again, Chattanooga, they're rocking over 300 million. All of those out with that are trying to put fiber up. I mean, millions of dollars that they're doing that. We have put and reinvested all of these cost savings back into the system to provide us the capability for self-healing on our lines when there is an outage. And that is the golden grail, trying to get to that without borrowing money. So we constantly reinvest back into the system to provide us this top grade, like on Harold Lane, and we're taking it out of the fields, we're putting it up on the road. So when we police to see where the outage is, you're doing that, in a service truck. Not you got boys literally walking out in the field. Oh, you see a wire down? No, I don't. This we're traveling the road. We're doing aerial cable, and he said that cable is in about this size. So instead of being spread out on a cross arm, so it frames up differently to minimize, the ability for it to get knocked out. All of that costs extra money. The size of the cable costs extra money. Where we're putting steel poles out costs extra money, and all that money comes from the savings that we're making on this DVR, which you can see we did an calculation. It was over 30 million because of where our line loss is and what we do. All of that has been plowed back into the system. Makes a big difference.
So what action do you need from the board, if any? for this
Other than
agreement?
I wanted to take this opportunity because I thought it was a great one, and it also gives me a chance to educate some of the new members on the board to give you a little back history to get to where we are. Because normally this would have been done, and you wouldn't have known anything. Yes.
If I say something wrong, tell me.
If I say something wrong, tell me.
Well, I might not know. If any of y'all have State Farm insurance, they may give you a little device called a ting that you plug into
Yes.
the wall.
I've got one.
I do too. It monitors the voltage in your house, and once a month you will get an email that has weekly charts of minute by minute voltage across your house. And if you look at them occasionally, you can see all this at work.
Right.
All of a sudden it'll be going along, it'll drop right out to the bottom, still within limits.
Right.
But it'll drop it out to the bottom, come over, right back up and go on.
That's when we are pulling the levers on the virtual power plant.
And that's what we're doing in a much bigger scale. On every meter in our system, their AMI system, we're bringing that information back. We're monitoring to make sure that end line meter out there stays above that minimum threshold.
This is just interesting
Yeah.
to look at.
They control every substation has regulators, so they control what comes out of the substation in terms of voltage, and they have to boost that up, in order to get that last end of the guy line. So it's not quality everywhere, and then different places on the line you've got boosters in order to boost it up. They either boost it or buck it. They either bring it up or they bring it down. So they can't. They've got to literally go out there, and it's like a clock, and they literally turn it over 18 degrees both ways, right? Isn't it something like that? Ed Ross had me do that when I first came here. I'm an accountant. I'm in the substation. It's a mess. But anyway, they're doing that literally by hand. We're literally doing that with a click of the mouse, and targeting. All of that to say, we're saving a lot of money, and our customers are receiving the benefit of that. So, unless you've got any more questions,
I think you put our computers to sleep, Greg.
I did, but we're going to get you back here. I'll get you back. There.
No, I think Greg just left. He got, I couldn't
I
resist.
was over there on my mouse.
All right, anything else on the TVA agreement? Great job.
Thank you.
Thank
I've got these contracts. If anyone wants to work on this, and we upload these? I
Yeah.
think we did.
Well,
Good.
I think so the one we have has the old formula in it. I don't know.
No, I gave you the amendment too.
Okay, I'll have to
The
dig back.
amendment
through.
is only 2 pages.
Okay, I'll
So-
dig back through and make sure.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Preliminary capital.
Yeah.
Our chairman said, we'd like to start this a little early, and which is what I want to do. And the first thing we do is we look at capital, and you can help give me some direction on how granular you want me to get.
So I guess before you jump in, to kind of fill in a couple of gaps. So last year, for those that were on the board last year, we kind of had a quick turnaround on the budget. I think it was a couple of weeks. I want to say maybe 3 weeks, something like that. And I just asked if there was any way we could get some early info to start planning so that we'd have some time as a board to digest. And so what Greg and his team have put together is kind of that first look. If there's anything else, this is a good time to kind of chime in. But we also have some time because it's not due until
End of June, so
End of
it,
June.
the approval will come in the June board meeting.
so we got a couple months to kind of start digesting some of this. And if you don't want to see it early, let me know too.
Yeah.
We can have them stop doing the work.
So what I've tried to do is I serve on boards also, and so I tried to put together what, if I was in your shoes, something that I would like to see, and I tried to make it to, because we're at different levels of understanding on the board. Some of you have been around a while, and some of you haven't been. So I always take it from day one, if that's okay, to help build the model. First thing is capital outlay, and capital expenditures are things that really are going to bring you value for more than a year. And I mean, it's an accounting function, so Dusty and I understand this really well. Anything that if you buy a car, that's a capital thing. Should last you more than a year. If you buy an ice cream, that's an expense, because you're going to eat it and you're done.
Sometimes that lasts for more than a year.
Yeah, no, I don't know,
Much ice cream. you eat.
but for capital, those are the things that hit the balance sheet. Those are their assets that are depreciated over time, over the life of that asset, and they're a balance sheet item. The only thing you see on the income statement is the depreciation, recognizing that asset over this period of time is not worth what it was over the previous period. That's depreciation. Anything to do with expense, things that are day to day, like operating the electric, water, and sewer distribution and collection system, in order to operate that's an expense, and that goes directly to the income statement, which goes directly to net income. Salaries, utilities, customer sales expenses all go into the income statement as expenses, but capital, even though you got to spend the cash to get it, and cash is an asset, the expense for that doesn't hit the income statement, and therefore net income is not widely impacted by a large capital asset. Now, the process that we go through, the prism, if you will, for both electric, water, and sewer is the same. When each year we assess the condition of what assets we have out there to determine whether or not are we going to make it another year. And that's when Greg tells me that pump station, the epoxies run off, and we're not going to make it another year. We have got to do something. But we've held that thing on for a while, haven't we, buddy?
Mm-hmm.
These we identify to see if we can maintain them with maintenance or if we have to replace them, and are they effectively doing the operational work that they were designed to do. And that's when Greg talked about the force main, where it wouldn't make it up the hill. We had to enlarge that. So that's where we get to this. It's not fulfilling the operational needs that we have. Both instances, Greg, I've used the water and sewer department for you. So upgrade and replace the potential. Identify if the assets has any potential for upgrades. Instead of just replacing it, can we add something to it to upgrade it? And we've done that a lot in a lot of the assets that we have. And then we assess whether or not the asset meets the requirements for growth and acquisition. And that acquisition, for example, is I think one day that we're in talks right now with NARS, whether or not we're going to have the capability to provide them the ability to treat their wastewater in our plant. So that is an acquisition of that we value and weigh that all the time. And then we look at future requirements for the industry. ACETA, which I chair on that board, we're looking all the time for new industrial property, and certainly the big thing on the horizon is this Bull Run, and how are we going to position ourselves to serve that. So we look at things that are going. We look at these strategic growth plans, and we have our long-term strategic plan is to provide the best possible service that we can. So everything has to fall in line. Are we doing what's necessary for us to provide this FLISR system to all of our customers throughout the 6 counties that we serve? So we look at that, and then we prioritize to how important it is. We evaluate the projects on urgency, impact, and the alignment, and we also look to make sure that we're not trying to get what we want, but we always get what we need, and that would be capital. And then finally, the rate impact. I like this intergenerational equity, and I've been preaching that for a long time. The philosophy that we go by is that you shouldn't have a rate schedule that is so high that will provide you the resources to purchase long-term capital assets, because you're putting the burden on current ratepayers for the benefit of future ratepayers. So that's why borrowing is not a bad word, because you're looking for an asset that's going to serve out 20 years. If we do a great upgrade, if we put a substation out there, or we upgrade the wastewater treatment plant, we don't want current ratepayers to have the rate so high that it'll bring in the resources to pay that in cash. Does that make sense? So that intergenerational equity is very important, because we've got our thumb on protecting current ratepayers and future ratepayers. Everybody pay their fair share. So capital outlay, electric. I'm going to ask, you've got copies of that. I'm going to hand that to you so you have something in your hand, which you haven't read because we didn't upload this. I think, Dustin, you're going to give some down there. You didn't upload this because I just finished it. But we'll get it uploaded. But this way, it'll put something in your hand you can take with you. What we do in electric, and what you did have a copy of, is this preliminary capital report. In this, we have what we call reoccurring annual, and that's that group that's in that first bunch, and then I have a space in between. If you see, it goes all the way down to other projects in the distribution work, and that general work orders have $1.2 million. That's where that space is. So that first tier of that, and I've got it on this nice little red box around there. That's new services, transformers, meters, tools, equipment, security lights, small line extensions, replacement of poles and conductors, general work. They are reoccurring standard things that we provide funds for, that we have to provide funds for, and that are capital in nature. They last more than a year. Now, pre-COVID, to give you an idea of what we deal with, pre-COVID, that alignment there were actual costs for that grouping of reoccurring products was $1.5 million. This past fiscal year, ending 2024, it was $3,929,000. These are standard things, and that's a 155% increase in the cost of that. That's what our supply line has done for us. So we have got to eat that 155% increase in this grouping, and we're planning for more in 2025. So I've got that as a precursor to your ability to look at what we're preliminarily proposing, because what we do next is we then go through the budgetary process of revenues and expenses, and then tie that to net income, which puts it back into available cash, and then we put this capital outlay in that scenario to see, are we going to have sufficient funds to provide the necessary funding for these capital projects. So the only way that this would change is if something immediately came up on the horizon in the next month or we saw that we were not gonna have sufficient funds, and is that there's something that we can defer, and or are we gonna recommend that we borrow money? We don't think that either of those things are gonna happen. We think we're gonna have sufficient revenue to more than meet our these capital commitments that we have. And we're not anticipating any rate action, recommending any rate action. But that's the quick down and dirty on electric that essentially, which is why I wanted to give you something in your hand that will be more meat. Now, if you determine, and we then would be what I call real granular, is we would go down line by line, because what I require, what the staff provides, is they have to go through all of that prism that I talked about to determine why is it necessary, what it's going to replace, and how are we going to fund it. So we can get to that, if you have one thing that you see, you can call me, or you can ask next month, and we'll be able. Or if you have a question now, we can get sure down into it pretty quickly.
Are we able to share equipment between sewer and water and electric?
We yes. The answer is yes for water and sewer. The answer is no. We charge each other. We charge each other. So I mean, we're getting this this little digger mini
X.
yes. So this will give two to the water and sewer department. But electric, when these little garden diggers are out there, they're doing underground, and they got to get through a fence, somebody's fence. They schedule with Greg, and whatever they use, the time that they use that, and if they have an operator, they use that. All that gets charged to the electric department. The electric department has to pay that back, and vice versa. If you're using or backhoe, we cannot intermingle funds by contract from the electric, but we can in water and sewer. Sewer doesn't have cash; it all comes to the water department. So, but we have to have a rate structure in place that supports the operation integrity of the sewer department. All right, I'll go on to water and sewer unless you've got a question. And you should have your hand those out too. I'm sorry.
Yes, we got both electric and
Good.
water and sewer. Yes.
So all that nice little artistic work on that PowerPoint. Essentially, it's the same deal. And that deal is up to that space to work orders, it's reoccurring. All of that distribution is reoccurring to meters, tools, equipment, fire hydrants, water line valves, general work orders. That is reoccurring annually. And since pre-COVID, that has gone up. And again, this is water and sewer, so we're not talking millions of dollars, but it's up 55%. All of that goes into rates and growth, really, and I guess our ability to trim expenses has kept rate action from being necessary in order to eat this increase in cost. And again, now you should have what I've given you on these notes for the water and sewer that is a little more granular even than what there is in electric. I've tried to go down. Water and sewer is important because $50,000 and $100,000 is a big deal to this utility for water and sewer. So you'll have that to review. And again, if you've got any immediate questions, we have got all the answers on that. But if you look through this and you have a question, you can, depending on how quickly you want it, you can call and I can give you the answer right away, or you can bring it up next month. Because next month I hope to have for you revenue and expenses. We'll get more into that.
Okay.
do any of the products that we routinely use, are they originated in China?
Mostly, no, but I don't know. Most of them are assembled. If we have an assembly here, but I don't. I'm thinking of you, Greg. I'm thinking of you. Because we literally do not allow some of these Italian,
Yeah, the major
Chinese.
components, such as transformers and stuff, require they be manufactured in the U.S. Now, there's certain.
I don't know, in the hardware you get to the nuts and bolts.
Not one.
I'm telling you, I've got a computer in there. I've got a printer in my office that I'm saying that there's language in there that I don't understand. When I get the instructions, we got about 14 different ones in there. So I'm sure that filters through. Will that make a difference with the tariffs? And part of what I've got down here is the unknown factor on how that's going to play, because it'll play in everything. But what'll offset that is energy. If oil prices go down, and I think through all this they will, that ripples through everything. So yeah. Are we good with that? Questions with that? Shall I move on, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think let's go to other business. Thank you for putting that together.
Yes. I do have some other business. All right. I wrote this down because I've been talking a lot. I'm telling you that you should, literally, we were 30 minutes away on some of these, which is why you got truncated on the water and sewer on the Capitol. Historically, we've had a voice and a seat at the table, serving on various TVA and TVPPA leadership committees. We've also engaged with all of the Valley congressional delegation. I've been to D.C., and Todd's been to D.C. In my opinion, it's important to support projects aligning with the public power model and critique those that don't. I'm very much supportive of the public power model. And I'm providing you, did I give you that, Todd?
We've got those
And
right
this
here.
is nothing more than a copy, so you'll know that I have written Secretary Wright, who is the Secretary of Energy, to support TVA's small modular reactor, the SMR project. So we're trying to get out there, our voice to be heard, and I wanted you to have a copy of that. And there, as we talked earlier, Steve, many new developments at TVA. I'm telling you, it's in a turmoil. The new CEO, Don Ball, we worked together through what previous challenges. These rolling blackouts were a big thing. I remember we were having lunch with him the Tuesday before or something like that. And then, what word did he use? Well positioned. We were well positioned, he said, because we asked him, no rolling blackouts, right? No, we're well positioned. And lo and behold, that wasn't the case. But we do have a really good relationship, and I'm convinced we're going to work well together going forward. CUB has achieved diamond status, and last week our organization was recognized by the American Public Power Association, APPA, with the diamond status in the 2024 Safety Award of Excellence. And we've done this for the second consecutive year. This we just got, so I didn't even take it out of the wrapper, But we're very proud of that because it represents our commitment to safety. We've got a great and have had a great safety program. Knock on wood, we focus on that a lot, and this is it's a testimony. I think there were only 3 in the state, in the whole valley, 3 in the whole valley that got that. So very proud of that. Very very proud of because it gets us all. It's the whole company. Everybody working safe. I saw them down there putting the liners in as they get into the pit down there in front of Hoskins in the flat, and they make sure everyone had their heart out. And they're not even our employees, but we look out for that. Safety is very important to us. Norris Day on the 28th of March the Norris community celebrated their Arbor Day, which they are really tree people up there, no doubt about it. They had students out there, and we had Tim West, who is our ISA certified arborist, and he's our right-of-way coordinator. Cub always donates a tree. We donated a white oak for them to plant, and they are always very appreciative. We work hard with them. We have earned the Tree Line USA utility recognition for over 20 years now. I remember when we first got into that, and I think Norris was the first tree line city in the country, or one of the first. Do you have any?
I know they were first in the state.
They were first in the state. So, I mean, Norris, again, tree folks, we try to support that. All works out well. So that's what I have. Of course, next month we'll work on the proposed budget, which you'll have offered to you for approval in June. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you.
Very good, Greg.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other business? Rob?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I'm sorry I've not been here in a while.
No,
so,
go for it.
First is Mr. Houck wanted to congratulate CUB. They had some sort of power thing down there, and he said y'all were down there well into the night, and he was just very appreciative. I don't know what happened, but it got fixed, but it took all night. I think.
Underground. It was the
Okay.
underground.
Yes.
So that was good. And then again, you mentioned me being on the city council. If there's anything y'all ever want me to pass on, be glad to do it. The water thing, got the reporter to come up and
I
ask
really
me a question
appreciate that.
about the water. And then the last thing is, I was going to bring this up, but I missed the last two meetings. When I watched the stuff that was happening in LA, and they didn't have water in their fire hydrants, so I had a question for that. I talked to Chief Little, and overall we have a very good ISO rating for the city of Clinton. Complicated formula, but one of the components is water and water pressure. So obviously we have a pretty good thing. But I asked, is there anything, over time we like to work together to fix? He had mentioned, I didn't realize this, that the fire hydrant's color tells its pressure. Red is the worst. You can't do much with, is my understanding.
That's
Yeah.
all 6 inch.
Yeah, we got 15 of those in the city. Is there anything, a couple questions, anything we can do about that long term? Partner with the city. Number two is the pipes out the side of the fire hydrant don't suck as much water. The one in the middle is one that they can pull the most water from. And I think he says there's about 8 of those that have locks on the middle part, which they'd like to access. Again, is there any way for improvements on those two things?
Let me start out by saying, and I know you're going to jump in a second, Greg. The good news is fire protection is under the auspice of the city.
But the major ingredient is water.
That's correct. That's correct. Which then goes from the city. You say, what CUB is currently working under was mostly the city was the one that put it in. You say, there are fire hydrants on 4-inch lines, which you can't. I mean, you just forget it. You say that, and I've seen that all over. Not on our system. 6 inches is the minimum. So then you get down to if we are responsible, and I think the state, 20-some PSI is the minimum grade
At the water meter.
at the water meter, and some have a hard time getting to that when they live, on the top of the ridge. So it's all about cost. It's about cost. What makes good sense, and that gets down to what the prison that we go through. We'll work with the city we'll go through any hoop that we can. But when it comes down to expanding the size, and where it's located in relation to the reservoir, there's so many PSI for every foot high you go. So a fire hydrant here and the reservoirs here is different than a fire hydrant here. They're going to get a lot more pressure doing that. And a lot of Clintons like this. So depending on where that is in relation to, all of that's a no to the city. And we check that all the time. if we keep the reservoirs up, which we do, then they'll get the maximum PSI at every station that they go to. But to change that, you're going to either have to change the height of where you store that, which is a reservoir. Now you're into millions, or you're going to have to adjust the volume. If it's a volume problem, you'll have to adjust the volume. But most of the time, it's pressure. Am I right, Greg?
Yes.
I love it the way you just jumped right in there. That was so full of explanation because it's a balance.
Yes, that's true. It is a balance. You did a great job explaining all that, but it is true. It's a balance because the volume and pressure are two different things. You got to have it. Volume's related to the size of the pipe. Pressure is related to the height of the tank, the water column in the tank. It's to help you out a little bit. A foot of water in a tank is about a half a pound of pressure. Okay, at that level, at the tank, at the ground level. So as the pressure increases, as you go down the water column, so it's only a half a pound. So you're looking at this up here compared to down here at Main Street. You know, you might get 100 pounds of pressure.
Is there a way to prove that over time, though? I'm not asking for something. If we've got 15 red hydrants, could we get it down to 10 over time? Or do we
I
usually
don't
keep
really
red,
see.
why do we keep red hydrants?
I don't see that there is no. I mean, I can't think of a wiggle way to get out of that, other than the two things we've got to raise. Now, boosters, you know, I guess you could say, if you put pumps on, if you put a booster pump on, that would raise the pressure, wouldn't raise the volume. You know,
Some of those volume runs could be long though too, right? If you've got a 6-inch line that you want to increase, I mean that could be, how many miles are we talking about a pipe on some of those?
You know, when you talk about volume, not to get into the weeds too much, when you talk about volume, it's like a line, electrical lines and stuff. That's the way I associate amps and water. When you talk about it, it depends on the demand that comes off that section of line as well before it gets to the hydrant. You got to look at that. So that's the reason why it encompasses around the size of the pipe as well. 6 inches to me is the bare bone, you know, the least size for a fire hydrant. That's per TDEC standards, 6 inch. But depending on the demand coming off that 6 inch, it might require a larger pipe because of growth, everything else associated with it. So there's a lot of factors, like Greg was talking about, that has to do with pressure and volume.
you know, the
So what could be done?
pumpers.
I mean,
You get a pumper. You know, I mean that's essentially what you're saying is, does the city provide fire protection? The answer to that is yes. Does the city provide fire protection at every residence within the city? Well, that's a question. You know, Skyline Drive, for example. You know, they're up on the hill, and there's always a pressure problem there. You know, and we've got a booster pump at the foot of that. You know, but booster pumps would help pressure, but not volume.
We
So-
have a pumper, and then there's a way to pressurize the water through the fire trucks.
Right.
But is there any sense keeping red fire hydrants up?
Well,
If it's
I
an
would think that-
inadequate flow, because I think the city pays rent to CUB on those hydrants. Does that make sense if they're inadequate?
You know, I mean, I guess you really got to define inadequate because
I'm just going
Water-
off the website where it says one with the red top is below 500 gallons per minute, and it's saying it's inadequate for fires. I don't know. I'm just
if you had a pumper there, it would be filling that pumper up.
okay.
You know, they would open that up.
So
I'm
it can still
telling
be
you,
used.
they wouldn't bypass a red cap fire hydrant. No, I couldn't imagine that they would do that. I mean, they're still testing those, are they not, Greg?
Okay.
Fire department does.
far better than nothing.
That's what
Okay.
I'm saying.
How about the locks on the ones where they
Absolutely,
can't
it's water.
access is that just a volume issue?
No,
There's locks on
That-
some of the ones that
It's
have
on the steamer nozzle.
Yes, that's
It's on the
correct.
steamer nozzle. That is a volume issue because Normally, when the fire department hooks up to the steamer nozzle, they have their pumper with it,
And that's sucking everything.
and you
Okay.
can
It suck
create a
it too-
vacuum,
it Suck it too quick.
and you can collapse the pipe
Okay.
because you're sucking off that steamer nozzle. But the 2.5-inch nozzles are fine. It's just the fact whenever you open that steamer nozzle, you have a pumper truck there to get back to Greg's point about creating your own pressure and volume, off that, and you can collapse the line, create a vacuum on it.
A lot of those are old lines too that go into those red fire hydrants, which are not, they've been there a long time, very dangerous to put that kind of suction on it. Suction's the same, can be the same as pressure inside. You suck it out, it'll collapse the line about as much as too much pressure. Actually more, wouldn't it? That'd be
That's
right.
correct.
Makes sense.
We'd be glad to work with him to do, if he had any suggestions that made any sense at all, but with our 6,000 water customers, it would have to be grants or something.
Something like we're doing downtown.
Yeah, and then, I would think that would be to trade out a 6-inch line for an 8-inch. I'm just saying, I just can't see it. Now, every time we do an opportunity for us to upgrade, we always take that opportunity. We always take that opportunity. I know utilities, which I've said, and so does he, they put in 4-inch mains. 4-inch mains. Now, why would you ever do that? Because you can never put a fire hydrant on a 4-inch main. Give me a 6-inch to put something on there, But yeah, we don't put those out there. But we're not resistant. I just don't know of an easy answer.
Overall, like I said, the ISO rating's good, which accounts for a portion of the pressure, so we're not in bad shape. Just long term, if we can upgrade things.
We will.
Yeah.
We will always do that. I guess the reservoir would be a big thing too. I mean, if we're going to put a new one up, we'll put it up as high as we can.
And the downtown project will improve as well, because we're upgrading the lines down there for the areas down there as well.
We have the water. We've got water. So it's not like we've got a shortage of water. We don't. It's the terrain and the height and then working within what you've already got in the ground.
Gotcha.
Thanks for the explanation and the good questions. Any other questions? Steve, anything? Steve? Dave? All right, make a motion, we adjourn. Anybody want to throw that out there?
So moved.
All right. Meeting adjourned.